They told you that if you treated her like a queen, she would love you back. They told you that if you were patient, attentive, and thoughtful, she would finally appreciate your value. They lied to you, because every time you tried to become that perfect man, you became invisible. The truth is harsh. She only chooses you when she feels vulnerable in front of you. Not from physical fear, but from psychological admiration. She only becomes obsessed with the man she cannot control, and this is where your awakening starts. When you become her comfort zone, you die in her desire. Because feminine desire is never born from safety. It's born from imbalance, from that silent tension that keeps her questioning whether she truly has you. Her emotional attachment is built on small doses of uncertainty, not on too much validation. And I'm going to prove it. She doesn't fall in love when you protect her from everything. She falls in love when she feels her emotional power can't break you. What makes her love you is not that you put her first, but that you put yourself first, even above her. That's not selfishness. It's the language of value, because the man who chooses himself will always be more attractive than the one who chooses her over his own dignity. Does it sound harsh? I'm not selling you a fairy tale. I'm giving you the cure to emotional self-destruction. Every time you said yes to avoid conflict, every time you ignored her disrespect, every time you gave in, because you were scared to lose her, you dug your own emotional grave. She won't do it on purpose, but if she feels she can break you, she will test you. And when she sees there's no resistance, she gets bored. Because what she really craves, even though she'll never admit it, is emotional structure. A wall she can push against that doesn't fall. But here's the mistake most men make. They think attraction is earned by pleasing her. A fatal mistake. Attraction stays alive when you are an emotional challenge, when your validation isn't free, when your attention is a reward, not a donation. Sexual polarity needs friction. If you are all softness, she cannot find the contrast needed to desire you. And that contrast isn't about yelling or dominating, it's about firmness, knowing exactly when to say no. It's holding your boundaries even when she cries. It's refusing to trade your self-respect for her affection. Do you know when she finally sees you as a real man? When her drama no longer shakes you? When she can cry, scream, or create chaos, and you still stand firm, not because you're cold, but because you have principles, because you don't negotiate your emotional worth. And do you know what happens then? She starts seeing you differently. She desires you more. She respects you more. Because deep down, she realizes you cannot be controlled. She sees her games don't work on you, that you're not a man who can be tamed. And that thought turns her on. No matter how physically attracted she is, if she doesn't feel she could lose you, she will never fully invest emotionally. It's that simple. And all this time you've been giving your soul to someone who never truly risked hers for you. That ends today. Because in the next moments, you're going to learn the art of being desired. But first, you must deprogram yourself. Everything they taught you about how to treat a woman, we're going to rewrite it. Because this isn't about mistreating her. It's about ending the mistreatment of yourself. The lie that being good is enough. It's not. Real attraction begins the moment you stop fearing rejection. When you no longer need her approval to feel worthy. When you can look her in the eyes and say, "This is who I am. You can take it or leave it, but I won't betray myself to keep you." And in that moment of detachment, everything changes. She begins to see you differently, because now she doesn't just like you, she respects you. And respect is the only foundation that makes desire last. We're going to rebuild you from the inside, because if she is going to love you, let it be for who you truly are, not for who you pretend to be. And that man begins today. There's something no self-help book told you. Something no influencer dares to say for fear of being canceled. The female mind is not designed to respect a man who is scared to make her uncomfortable. That's why, when you act with extreme care just to be the good guy, the only thing you trigger is her defense, never her desire. This isn't hatred. It's biology, raw and ancient. For thousands of years, women survived by choosing strength, not submission. The man who showed authority, stability, emotional control, because only that kind of man could protect, lead, and ensure survival. And even though we don't live in caves anymore, the emotional software hasn't changed much. Her subconscious still seeks the same thing: power. Not violent power, not control, but emotional power. Unshakable self-confidence. The courage to set boundaries without fear, to walk your path without asking permission. To be the man who respects himself so deeply that both the world and she have no choice but to respect you too. If you dodge conflict fearing she'll leave, she won't view it as kind, she'll view it as weak. Your core biology is telling her, I can't defend, I can only submit. And the second she detects that, her attraction starts to fade. Perhaps not right away, perhaps she will remain for a bit, but some part of her detaches, and you will not even see it occur. You turn unseen, unimportant, since what formerly seemed like desire slowly becomes silent letdown. Pay close attention. The bulk of her trials aren't deliberate. She isn't there reasoning, let's see if he leads or follows. They are subconscious, innate behavioral reflexes. Showing up late intentionally, disregarding your texts, opposing you without cause, probing your assurance just to check if you waver. Every one of these is a trial. Trials for respect. And without knowing it, you fail them. Since you believe love is gained through appeasement, you don't grasp that respect is gained by confronting. Each instance you yield with no pushback, she doesn't feel thankful, she feels disappointed. As her intuition identifies it immediately, you are not the sort of man who can guide. And if she cannot rely on you to guide, she cannot look up to you. And if she cannot look up to you, she can never really want you. Here is where Machiavelli enters. He comprehended a thing most men don't get, that the appearance of strength is often more vital than strength itself. It isn't important if you know your value. If you don't convey it via resolute acts, the world won't see it, and nor will she. It's for this reason, each time you yield just to dodge a fight, you're revealing to her that your feelings are bargainable. And when your feelings can be bargained, so can your worth. There is a harsh reality you must etch in your brain. Each time you explain your stance, you forfeit a part of your strength. Since a ruler doesn't clarify his choices, a chief doesn't request approval to guide. You are not present to be validated. You are present to establish the course. And that fact is mirrored in all things, in the manner you talk, in the manner you move, in how you reply to her mockery, and how you manage her quiet. You don't respond, you determine. That's the boundary dividing an emotional guide from an emotional adherent. And are you aware of what occurs when, for the first instance in her life, she finds a man who doesn't quake before her feelings? She becomes bewildered. She feels unstable. She feels a thing she cannot comprehend. Profound, pulling desire because you just broke her template. She's accustomed to men who yield, to unhappy faces, to grievances, to emotional coercion. But not you. You remain composed. You remain solid. And that compels her to view you in a new light, to question who you really are, to esteem you, even if she won't concede it openly. Here is the deepest hidden truth no one reveals. Esteem always precedes affection. Always. Not ever the reverse. When she esteems you initially, love can blossom. But if she loves you lacking esteem for you, that love will fade the instant the first trial shows up. Since without esteem, there's no true emotional commitment. Thus, your goal isn't to get her to like you extra, it's to get her to esteem you extra. How? With steadfastness, with resolve, with planned disengagement, with declining to repay poor conduct with a pleasant manner. By not detailing your limits, but embodying them. And pay attention. This is not about being frigid or harsh. It is about revealing you're a man with a core, a man with foresight, a man with internal strength. Since that sort of man is uncommon, and when he shows up, he can't be overlooked. So each time you sense the impulse to yield from fear, she will leave, pause, inhale, and recall this. If you relinquish your strength for affection, you will forfeit both. But if you keep your strength, even if she leaves, you can only prevail. Since forfeited esteem can't be recovered with bouquets, it is just restored via alteration, and that alteration starts now. In the following part, I am going to reveal how to utilize this in actual life, how to shift from the good man who permits all things to the steadfast man she would not venture to try. There is an unseen boundary between the ache that ruins a woman and the ache that gets her hooked on you. A boundary so fine that most men pass it not even knowing it and fail. Now, you are going to grasp how to tread that boundary with skill, since if you aren't aware how to handle ache, you will either shatter yourself or shatter her, and in either situation, you fail. Let us clarify one point from the beginning. This isn't an appeal to be harsh. It's not regarding controlling, harming, or degrading. It is about comprehending that ache in a connection is not merely unavoidable, it's essential. The issue isn't ache itself. The issue is that you have not grasped how to wield it. And if you aren't aware how to wield it, she won't be aware how to esteem you either. There are two types of ache. Ruinous ache comes from dread, acrimony, and ill will. It is the type uncertain men produce, the one that chastises with quiet, yelling, or emotional apathy. That sort of ache doesn't assemble anything, it just demolishes. But then there is productive ache, the type that shows up when you hold strong in your limits, when you decline to be controlled, when she attempts to drag you into her theatrics, and you just won't join the match. That's the ache that alters her. Since in that instant, you're instructing her that the prior codes don't apply to you, that you don't respond like all the others, that you aren't scared to forfeit her if retaining her means deceiving yourself. And even if she cannot grasp it rationally, a piece of her begins to look up to you, since for the first instance, she's found a genuine man. Let me offer you a harsh illustration. She's annoyed because you failed to answer her text inside 5 minutes. She writes you, "Are you disregarding me?" The typical man scrambles to vindicate himself. "Sorry, I was occupied. I didn't want you to believe I was disregarding you and such." He believes his clarification will soothe her, but it achieves the reverse, since what it truly reveals to her is that his focus is entirely governed by his dread of her displeasure. Now picture a different case. She dispatches the same text, and you merely answer, "No, no theatrics, no clarifications, just quiet." What occurs then? Ache, but not just any sort. It is the kind of ache that compels her to doubt her influence over you, to reconsider her standing, to esteem you more. This kind of ache is not by chance. It's precise. It's emotional accuracy. And this is just where most men flounder. They believe that to guide, they must be cold, rough, or aloof. No, you just must be solid, unmoving, reliable. Your strength doesn't arise from how loudly you yell, it arises from how composed you stay when all in her attempts to rattle your base. Productive ache shows up when you state no and don't explain it, when you void a plan because she slighted your time, when you overlook her outburst rather than rewarding it, when you don't alter your position just because she weeps. That sort of ache doesn't repel her, it instructs her, it readjusts her emotionally. It notifies her that the strength isn't in her theatrics, it's in your core, and she requires that. Since her makeup is emotional, flowing, and always shifting, you are not present to trail her bedlam, you are present to supply structure, emotional structure, limits, consistency. When you are missing structure, she takes on emotional guidance, and that wears her out, not since she's frail, but since she doesn't desire that position. She wishes to yield, but only to a man who has shown himself to be unbreakable. Now you grasp why, when you're overly accommodating, she often feels perplexed. Since her intuition hints, no one can be this yielding and also be authentic. So what does she do? She tries you over and over until she assures herself that you're not authentic. And when she does, she doesn't stop it with phrases, she stops it with space. Machiavelli stated, "He who fails to correct a mistake makes it his." Each time you permit disrespect without a penalty, you are quietly informing yourself that it's okay. And if you allow it, she will too. Since your principles are never set by what you utter, they're set by what you endure. That is why productive ache is your strongest tool. Since it instructs, sans violence, that your limits are not debatable. It reveals to her that you're not emotionally present for ploys, that you can love her profoundly, but you love yourself more. And that self-regard is what mesmerizes her. Since everyone else yields, everyone else pleads, everyone else secures calm at the expense of their self-worth, but not you. You move in the opposing way, and that disquiets her, rattles her, confronts her, and pulls her in even more. Now be wary. This strength is not a ploy. If you misuse it, you forfeit everything. If you wield ache to dominate, to get even, or to demonstrate dominance, you cease being a guide and turn into an emotional despot. And that also generates rejection. The equilibrium rests in your intention. If your intention is to guard your core, your calm, and your worth, then the ache you inflict is productive. But if your intention is to chastise her, to degrade her, to make her feel tiny, then you're astray. You must operate like a physician, not a butcher. You must grasp emotional accuracy, not emotional brutality. And the only means to develop that accuracy is via repetition, self-governance, and disengagement. Since if you can't endure her weeping without shattering, if you can't observe her rage without scrambling to mend it, then you're not prepared to guide. And being an emotional guide, that's what thrills a woman the most over time. Because yes, she can discover men who are more attractive, wealthier, or more well-liked, but a man who understands how to handle his internal strength? That's uncommon. And what's uncommon becomes precious, becomes compelling. That sort of alteration cannot be purchased. It needs to be nurtured. And that nurturing starts now. The most dreaded word among men, and the most wanted by women. 3 letters, 1 beat, a noise that, when uttered by a man of real strength, can alter the whole direction of a connection. But when mishandled, it can ruin it. Today, you'll grasp how to make no end to your diadem. Pay close attention. Each time you state yes from dread, you relinquish your emotional seat. You proclaim that your urge to appease is greater than your urge to guard your principles. And when you do that, a part of her quietly fades. Since what a woman really wants deep inside is not a man who often says yes, it's a man who has the courage to say no without clarifications. No is not refusal, it's guidance. It's a quiet signal that states, I have choices, I have principles, and I will not risk my worth just to retain your focus. That signal, even if it hurts initially, rouses something strong in her, esteem, since she's not accustomed to it. Other men bargain, you proclaim. The strength of a properly uttered no doesn't arise from the term itself. It arises from the force behind it. If you state it with uncertainty, it registers as dread. If you state it with reluctance, it registers as a pretext. But if you state it from your core, it turns into a decree of sovereignty. And this is where most men blunder. They believe being alluring means being reachable, pliable, pleasant. But in that push to appease, they change into emotional decor, comfy, handy, and unseen. The no is what divides you from the decor. It's what makes you into a pursuit, into an oddity, into a man. Consider this. When she requests you to alter your plans, to yield to her humors, to forfeit something vital to you, and you comply without protest, what are you truly informing her? That she can shift your choices with emotion, a whimper or a menace, that you have no path of your own, that your core exists outside you. But when you state no and hold strong, when you observe her annoyed, perplexed, or let down, and you still don't alter your choice, When you reveal to her that you cannot be swayed, what do you suppose occurs? Right, ache. But that ache is not your foe. It's your comrade, since it informs her deep in her subconscious that you are a separate class of man, and what's separate always entrances her. This sort of no isn't yelled, it isn't compelled, it's stated placidly, without theatrics, without agitation, without the urge to sway her. Since the instant you attempt to sway her, you've already failed. Rulers don't bargain with commoners, not since she is inferior, but since your worth is not open to question. And this is where the split rests between the desperate no and the detached no. The desperate man states no while shaking inside, fearful of the fallout. His tone wavers, his posture pleads for validation. That no is breakable. But the detached man, he states no with an internal placidity, with the composure of one who knows he doesn't have to secure every skirmish to secure the war. That is the sort of no that builds legacies. Now, when must you wield it? Each time your ethics are threatened, each time she attempts to overstep a boundary you deem inviolable, each time your hours, your vitality, or your self-worth are put on the bargaining table. In those instances, your no isn't merely a term, it's a proclamation of your identity. And yes, sometimes you'll forfeit instances. You might forfeit dates, even connections. But pay attention. Every no you state from integrity moves you closer to an existence where you no longer must pretend to be cherished, where you no longer must deceive yourself to be welcomed, where you're esteemed not for what you provide, but for who you are. And are you aware of what occurs when a woman finds a man like that? She relents, since her whole testing mechanism ceases to function, since she can't shatter him. And then she yields, not to you, but to what you embody. Steadiness, guidance, emotional strength. Men like that are uncommon, and that is why when they show up, they leave an impression. They're memorable since they're not playing a part. They're embodying an integrity that declares through their no. Now picture this. You're in a tense talk. She wishes you to yield, to swap your ethics for a passing feeling. She stares at you fixedly, folds her arms and states, "If you truly cherished me, you'd do it." That's the instant most men fold. They yield, not since they think it's correct, but since they're fearful. But you're not that man anymore. You perceive the emotional snare. You don't link affection to compliance. You don't place your worth in jeopardy for momentary validation. So you inhale. You observe her placidly and you state no, not since you're frigid, but since you love yourself enough not to deceive yourself. And if after that, no, she weeps, gets irate, or warns she'll depart, you don't pursue her. You don't vindicate yourself. You don't recant your integrity, since integrity isn't bargained, it's embodied. And when the tumult abates, when she perceives you didn't depart, you didn't lose your composure, you didn't yield, she will begin to observe you differently. And those eyes, my companion, will at last see a man who can no longer be swayed. In the following part, we are going to examine how that same no reveals itself in your finances, how your monetary choices show whether your no is genuine or merely a performance to impress. Since if your finances aren't aligned with your proclamations, then your strength is naught but a mirage. And believe me, she will perceive it. Most men think that cash is their strongest asset to secure a woman, that if they finance, host, or offer presents, they'll be regarded as more worthy. But what they don't grasp is this. When cash isn't wielded from a stance of strength, it turns into pleading, and pleading extinguishes desire. Cash doesn't acquire esteem. Mishandled cash only acquires convenience, focus, and emotional leverage. Since the instant she perceives she just needs to grumble for you to access your funds, you've already failed. You're no longer a man who offers, you've turned into a usable asset, an emotional cash machine on legs. But this isn't regarding not paying, it's regarding how and why you pay. There are three classes of paying: transactional, courteous, and strategic. Transactional paying is the most perilous. It's when you attempt to acquire love, cover her expenses, her journeys, her impulses, just to compel her to remain. That class of paying always concludes in bitterness, since it drains you from within. You're swapping cash for fondness, and fondness that's acquired is never genuine. Then there's courteous paying, the one brimming with nice gestures, blossoms, meals, presents. This can be beneficial, but only when reciprocity exists, only when she's emotionally committed, when she's devoted, attentive, and involved. In that situation, it's not acquiring fondness, it's fostering connection. But if you provide without that groundwork, you're not being beneficent. You're offering a bribe for focus. And lastly, there's strategic paying, the class that arises from your core. It anticipates naught in exchange. It merely states, I do this since I wish to, since I possess plenty, since I merit it. This class of paying doesn't require acknowledgement. It's quiet, stable, and strong. And that's the class that acquires esteem. Machiavelli grasped this eons ago. He noted that financial strength must always be handled with shrewdness. A beneficent ruler lacking judgment soon turns into a lackey to the whims of his populace. The identical rule pertains to you. If your benefaction isn't directed by principles, it changes into feebleness. And she will perceive it, not in what you acquire, but in how you respond when you don't receive what you anticipated. If you get irate since you put in and weren't repaid, it's since you never provided from strength. You provided from want. And that want reeks. Cash in connections isn't an instrument of allure, it's an instrument of placement. You're revealing to her how much you prize your hours, your vitality, your focus. If you provide all of that away without charge, she prizes it at nil. But if you put it in strategically, she prizes it in gold. Now pay close attention. If she's enduring a difficult patch, monetary troubles, emotional duress, and you scramble to retrieve her without her showing genuine emotional commitment, you're not acting as a rescuer. You're acquiring emotional liability, and it will not be settled. The bleakest part? You'll believe you're acting the hero, but in her view, you're just one more needy supplier. Esteem doesn't arise from how much you provide. It arises from what you're prepared not to provide. From your capacity to state, no, that's not my burden. No, I'm not going to finance that. No, that's not for me to mend. That financial no is stronger than any diamond band since it informs her you are not open to being exploited. And when she senses that, she might get irate initially, but eventually a thing alters. She starts to see you in a new light. Since now, she understands she can't sway you with weeping or melancholy, that your assets possess filters, that you determine who, when, and why you provide. And that uplifts you. The cash you pay isn't just a monetary deed, it's a mental proclamation. Every cent you pay dispatches a signal. And if that signal states, I require you to feel worthy, she senses it, and she withdraws. But if that signal states, I am the worth, your company is the boon, then she starts contending to acquire your investment. Wish to know the supreme trial? Deny a monetary plea with poise. She requests cash for a ride, an outing, some minor boon, and you merely state, I'm unable. Or even better, just state no. No clarifications, no theatrics, then observe. Does she regard you differently? Does she withdraw? Get irate? Well done. You've just found her genuine motives, and if she responds with poise, accepts it, and proceeds to prize you the same, then perhaps she's deserving of investment, since your cash should only go toward someone who esteems the origin of that worth. You. Here's a harsh reality. Numerous women will try you with cash before they try you with feelings. They understand it's simpler to sway a bankroll than a brain. And if you succumb to that, you forfeit all you've developed. That is why your finances cannot be governed by the wish to appease. It needs to be governed by your foresight. When you put into yourself, your physique, your intellect, your development, you dispatch a quiet signal to existence. I am the main concern. And when she observes your cash moving toward your advancement instead of her impulses, a thing changes in her view. You're no longer a supplier. You're a guide. You're no longer attempting to acquire her fondness. You're revealing that you already merit it. See, the typical man pays to appease. The high-worth man puts in to uplift. And if an acquisition doesn't uplift you, doesn't mirror you, doesn't place you, then it has no room in your existence. Recall this: what you provide without principles forfeits its worth. But what you present with intention turns into an emblem of strength. And you are here to turn into that emblem, not just for her, but for you. Every cent you provide must possess intention. Every outlay must uplift your placement. If it fails to belong. All you've grasped thus far, the strength of stating no, the governance of cash, the skill of emotions, signifies naught if you fail to nurture the outlook that supports it. Since a man can grasp maneuvers, retain edicts, behave as if he possesses worth, but if he fails to sense it profoundly, he will disintegrate at the first trial. Genuine alteration occurs from inside, and that's what we are going to forge here. Your ruler mentality. And what constitutes a ruler? Not his attire, not his riches. His seat isn't crafted from gold. It's constructed from his composure, from his capacity to remain centered when all around him starts to rattle. While typical men shatter in a dispute, you stay solid. While others plead for focus, you project presence. While the masses scramble for validation, you select quiet. The quiet of a man who already grasps who he is. Quiet dominance is not regarding speaking forcefully. It's regarding not requiring to speak whatsoever. It's the command that emanates smoothly, the assurance that conveys without phrasing, the internal calm that perplexes all around you. Since no one can sway a man who isn't fearful of forfeiting, and that, my companion, is your new principle. Naught she does ought to possess the strength to yank you from your core. She might get irate, withdraw, overlook you, needle you, but you stay immobile. Not to chastise her, not to establish a claim, but since you're no longer prepared to deceive yourself for anybody. Listen, desire doesn't arise from theatrics, it arises from esteem, and esteem arises from consistency. If you state you're a man of worth, but behave from want, she senses it. If you state you don't require validation, but every motion shouts, "Observe me, affirm me," she detects it immediately. Since the female subconscious is like detection, it doesn't heed your phrasing, it deciphers your vitality. That is why your new goal is to align your vitality with your phrasing. Let every glance, every halt, every quiet declare for you. You don't require to yell to be regarded. You don't require to demonstrate to be credited. Since a ruler doesn't vie with commoners, he doesn't respond, he doesn't grovel, he just watches and determines. And here arrives the strongest notion of all: disengagement. Real strength is created when you're prepared to forfeit all things outside so you never forfeit yourself. When you don't hold on to anybody,